So during the most recent episode of Defending Jacob on Apple TV, the character of Lori, played by Michelle Dockery, says that she doesn't know how she's supposed to act or how they're supposed to act when they're trapped like prisoners in their own home. And I couldn't help but think, nobody knows what that feels like right now. So this episode of Defending Jacob, it's the fourth episode. The first episode that was released on its own. The last three episodes were released all at once. And this episode is entitled Damage Control. And I can see it's going to be hard watching this show on a weekly basis because I really enjoyed binging the first three episodes. But this episode, it just felt like I was ready to watch the next episode, but what was here was digestible for sure, but it wasn't, enough. I wanted more. It didn't really satisfy my Defending Jacob craving. I feel like some shows just benefit from binge watching, and I think that this show is one of them. And before I get into my reasons for saying that, if you're interested in seeing my weekly reviews of Defending Jacob as I put them out, I highly recommend subscribing to the channel so you don't miss them. And if you like anything I have to say, please give me a like. I really appreciate it. So getting into this episode, like I said, I feel like some shows should be binged. I don't always make this case. A lot of shows I just prefer to watch one at a time because I think it gives you more time to process and to differentiate. But a show like this, it's really just an 8-hour movie. I really feel like that's the best description of this show. I know that gets trotted out for a lot of different shows that aren't really like 8-hour movies, but this one and Stranger Things and a few others really do feel like they deserve to be watched all in one sitting. And I think that intense isolation is really the theme of the week. We really get to see this with Lori as she goes and watches this gala going on that she had been a part of setting up, but now she can't attend it because she's been set adrift from her work by the circumstances involving her son being accused of this murder. And you just see the longing that she's feeling to be there and to be participating in that. And she's so desiring to have someone she can confide in that the scene at the restaurant, it was just so sad because it dawned on me relatively early what was going on, but when it was eventually revealed that the person she was confiding in was a reporter who was taking advantage of her, I just felt so bad for her. And it's interesting because I feel like Andy is clearly better prepared for this because to some extent, Lori brings up to the reporter how he's never been that close to anyone except her. And you wonder if that wasn't a defense mechanism that he's adopted because of his father, who we find out this week was known as Bloody Billy Barber in the press. And the big hook for next week's episode is that Andy Barber, played by Chris Evans, is going to go see his father, played by J.K. Simmons. And they only show him briefly at the end of this episode, but it's a really good tease because I feel like that is going to be one of the more powerhouse scenes of this season. So I'm excited to see that scene next week when the two face off. But they're trying to have evidence for a potential genetic testing defense if Jacob is found guilty, and they can't get genetic evidence from Billy Barber unless Andy agrees to go meet him. So that's coming up. And this is the first time we've seen Andy seem a little bit uncertain of how to proceed. He's been very strong. We got to see him grill someone this week as he investigates alternative suspects. And it was, it's been very obvious that he's a very competent lawyer, but we haven't gotten to see that side of him a ton. It's only been in brief snippets because he's mainly just been cooped up in his house, going about his daily life. And honestly, it hasn't really been Chris Evans' show so far. I felt like Jaeden, Martell has been a lot more engaging so far, just that question of whether or not he actually did this. This week, we got to see a lot of isolation. We got to see the family just going about their daily lives. I wouldn't call this a filler episode because I felt like it will it is, contributing to our overall sense of how this has affected the Barber family. But there weren't a ton of major events that you could point to progressing the plot forward. The investigation hardly has moved forward. We know the police and the attorneys are questioning Derek, the person who is accusing Jacob, but otherwise we really haven't gotten a ton of new information. And obviously we got to see a little bit more of Sarah, and she has come over and she's spending time with Jacob, and you have to wonder why she's doing that, if she actually is someone that Jacob should trust. We got to see a little bit more of Joanna this week as she cross-examined Jacob. She's just a very, very competent attorney played by Cherry Jones here. I feel like the mutual respect between her and Chris Evans was demonstrated a little bit more as they discussed what they should do going forward, and Andy just bringing up how he thinks they need a better story. And it's interesting how he keeps saying they need a better story to distract the jury. He's just looking for an alternative solution that other people can believe. He doesn't have to know what happened. He knows his son is innocent in his own mind. At least that's what he's saying. And it was interesting because there was a pause that spoke volumes in a scene early in the episode when Lori was in bed with him and she asked him, is there a part of you, even a tiny part, that thinks he might have done it? And he pauses just long enough for you to know that he's not sure how to answer, and then he says, no, of course not. But as I said, not a super eventful episode, which is why I feel like this show could have been a binge. I feel like it's a mood piece, and it's really capturing what the Barber family is going through and their struggles. It's illustrating how their life has changed and just the intense feeling of isolation that they're going through. But there wasn't really enough that happened in this episode to make me feel satisfied. As I said, I really want to have the resolution to this story now. So that's my thoughts on this episode. But what did you think? Let me know in the comments section what parts of this episode you enjoyed. Let me know who you think might have done the murder, if you think that Jacob actually did it or not, and if there were any other standout scenes for you in this episode. And if you're enjoying this video and you want to see my weekly reviews as they come out, please consider subscribing to the channel. So those are my thoughts. You can watch other videos on this channel right now.